Let's start with kind of define for us what you mean by hobby programming.
Yeah, like I'll kick this off what I mean, and then I'll pitch both of you a question
Okay.
as well, because this is something I love asking people, and I might tell you like things I've heard too. So when I say hobby programming, I mean programming that is not during work hours. That is, so it's either during work hours secretly, or it's evenings or weekends. It's dubious about whether or not it will or does make money. I think it's not like 100%. Oh, it can't make money.
Mm-hmm.
It generally doesn't, but maybe it will. You know, the stuff that you really want to do. Like if I had time, I want to build this, or the things that you sneak into. And but the big question. This is where I'd love to start with.
Mm-hmm.
Is if you're really into guitar, like a guitar player, you go in, you write your code 9 to 5 or whatever your hours are, you maybe eat, and then you go into your little office, you plug in your amp, maybe your headphones if you live near people, or your garage, and you just shred, you do whatever you want to do, and you don't feel bad. But if I work 9 to 5 writing Ruby code, and then I eat my dinner, and then I go into my room and I open my laptop for more Ruby code, there's this part of my brain that's really big on work-life balance and not burning out and not overdoing it, that like, ooh, this is the same activity, just different. And how do I manage like not, because there's times where I like went a long time without writing it on my own, and that was actually bad for me. And then there's times where I like, would write it on my own a bit too much, but like, and then the learnings were coming into my work, so I'd feel really guilty. I'm like, oh, they're benefiting financially off my hobbyist. So my question to both of you would be, how do you, not what are you doing, but how do you approach hobbyist coding? And you kind of answered part of it, Chris.
Yeah. So I'll let you go, Kristen.
So I hate to, well, not that I hate to say it, but I mean, I've never really done hobbyist coding like that, like ever. And I think the reason why is twofold. One, I actually started as a systems administrator, then moved to a database administrator. Then I was kind of like IT management in the management arena and moved on to some line of business functions in terms of management. And then I started a company. So in terms of, I've never been employed as a developer anywhere. But now I do consulting doing it. I program on a regular basis, but it's all related to the job. And if I have free time, because again, I'm still pushing the log up the mountain to make the business better and better. Half my time is consulting, half my time is a SaaS app. So I don't do programming as a hobby. I do other things, not really as a hobby. But like at nighttime, if I'm like, okay, I have a little bit of time, I don't feel like doing, if I do feel like doing technology, I'm actually doing it related to the company. So it's not a hobby thing. So one, coming from that different background, like not being working for a developer, doing a 9 to 5, like I've never been a software engineer doing a 9 to 5 job. I've gone from doing other things that aren't development into that. But I will say, when I was working at a company, I would try out Oracle. I would do different things. I wouldn't hack code, but I would use technology and try different things, or trying to get Oracle running on Linux or even Postgres while I was still working, and just kept trying Linux and kept trying Linux. And was like, what the heck? Why is this happening? Nothing's working, because I was using Windows forever. Yeah. And then it was finally sometime in the 90s that it's like, okay, this will be my main driver. So that has been my technology, and I didn't feel guilty about it, or whatever. It's just what I do. I'm a techie guy, but I'm not as much of a hobby programmer guy. So that was a long explanation, but that kind of shows you why I don't do the hobby programming, because that's kind of like not where I came from.
Yeah, and I didn't do it for a very long time, and something I just realized earlier this year with the hobby programming. I was trying to get into hobby programming, and I started my coding with Chris early on, doing a web app that I wanted to do, right? Not this kind of web app I'm doing at work, but a different kind of web app that I was interested in. And I quickly discovered that just felt like work because it's still a web app, just because it's got a different theme, right? So what I discovered was I can still love to do Ruby, but I need to do something different with Ruby. So I looked at the game programming stuff, and that feels like a whole different thing. Even though I'm coding in Ruby, right? It's a completely different thing. So I don't feel the same burnout coming from work to that. So it feels like a hobby then.
Yeah, I think that's a really good couple of points there. And that kind of, thank you for like letting me, the guest, throw questions at you. I think this is probably like a free form thing. I'll have more questions, but that's really representative of like my hypothesis on this, which is people are different and they have differing interests. So like your brain might, well, actually, you know, I'll steal this. So initially I was feeling it and wondering about this. So I may not have said I work for a mom and pop e-commerce company called Shopify.
Yeah.
Sorry, that's the joke. The little startup. It's a scrappy startup, Canadian startup. Right. But like I'm on the Ruby, since May I've been on the Ruby and Rails infrastructure team. So I have some people who I work close to or near me, like an Aaron Patterson, or you know, we've got Raphael, Jean, some of these core team members that like when they're not on the clock, I just see so much that I could never like just attain, like so many things they maintain and like dig so deep into, like not even one of them do I feel I could dig deep enough to have an impact. And I'm just like, how are they doing it? Kevin Newton as well on my team. I'm just name dropping them because they do public things. I'm not name dropping people privately. They have a public presence where they say what they're doing. Sure. So, you know, like, oh, here's a syntax tree. And by the way, I whipped this thing up on the weekend and they're so accomplished. But me, I'm like, I love this stuff, but I really, really want to, like, I'm the person at 5 p.m. Slack's off. I don't have notifications or anything on my phone. I've only put Slack on my phone because I quite like this new thing where at like 8:40 in the morning, or, you know, when I'm going to make a coffee before I sit down, I look at Slack. So it's kind of like, I don't have the fear. I'm like, okay, I know what's happening, but there's nothing I can do about it for at least 10 minutes. Yep. And then my brain kind of sorts it and thinks about it a little longer than because it used to be really intimidating sitting at my desk because I live in Europe. So there'd be a bit more to catch up on. Right. So anyway, so I'm very protective of my time. I take my holidays religiously, and I tell other people too, especially if you have a flexible leave. I'm like, you know, if like we're not running a business, we're working for a business and we need to take the time. So how do I balance this with this Ruby thing? And I asked the head of Ruby and Rails Infra is an engineer called manager called Mike D'Alessio. And I'd said this exact same thing to him. He said, you know, it's a tricky question. And for me, one of my hobbies is coding. So I try to remember. So I look at it as that my hobby is to code. It also happens to be my job. But like what I want to do, like, what do you do after dinner when you plop on the sofa? Do you want to play guitar? Do you want to whittle? Do you want to watch TV and play a video game? And you know, like have a cup of tea? Do you read a book? Like any of those things are valid. However you use your time, or you know, like wrangle the kids. Like I don't have any kids, but you know, like nap. Take a nap, go to bed, mow the lawn, touch grass, go hiking. But so it's kind of like, that's why I really appreciate your answer, Creston, and then yours, Chris, because the answer is all the time to not at all. The whole spectrum's valid. It's what's for you. And that's what I want to kind of bring for if anyone's listening. So don't feel like we're saying you should do more than you're doing. Right. It's just, so but the first question is like, how do you view it? And I like really setting it aside as it is my hobby. So I do particular things to make it feel like my hobby. I do it maybe on the sofa with the TV on. I maybe don't do it too long. I maybe do really crazy stuff that is untested and could never make money. And, you know, I don't know if people like to have an adult beverage. If you put one of those in your hand, it might feel quite
Hobbyish.
yeah. The late Chris Seaton, who was on my team, he always, the story is he'd have a glass of champagne next to his machine after he'd go out doing training with the Army. So I was like, yeah, a glass of champagne by the machine. Okay, then I definitely know this is not work time, right? Like it's very, very fancy coding.
Yeah, I mean, having a beer in your hand and coding is more relaxing than listen to all the Slack chatter going back and forth, and oh god, I have to go over here and over here and over here and over here. You know, I can just sit and code.
And if you're having a couple, it kind of could set its own hard limit.
Yeah.
What's that? Isn't there the diagram, like maybe XKCD of like in theory BAC with like output? And I know not everybody drinks or anything, but I'm just saying like that is a hard limit. So it's just like you're not going to be writing much use, and it's not going to be going in. So you're going to have to kind of just go and enjoy your life. But yeah, so even though I'll be talking a bit about hobbying today with you, anyone listening, you definitely, like, and I think there is a thing like when we're on the job, whether it's for a business that we have or an employer, it does come in anyway. Like you say, explore that API, explore that integration, or, you know, the more senior you get, you're trusted to go do that yourself. And it secretly might be fun, right?
Yeah.
If you like this clip and want to watch another one, you can click right here. Or if you want to watch the full video, you can click here.